So we're live, PHO, or you can start the introduction.
Absolutely. Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much to the Luxembourg Blockchain Week and to the Boston Blockchain Association for the opportunity today of organizing this panel on blockchain and payments. A point of view from a very high level with our panelists here that represent different type of angles and different types of pieces of the value chain around payments that can benefit of blockchain. I would just introduce the panelists, and then we will go ahead with some questions around blockchain, crypto payments, Algorand utility in the space, of course. And these questions will be questions that will be posed to all the panelists at the same time. We have with us today Svein Walfels, that is the co-founder and chief executive of Monarium, an Icelandic e-money institution that did a lot for blockchain and with blockchain since early days. We have with us Silvio Barbera, that is managing director of Café Barbera, which is a commodity out of Italy. In Italy, is pretty much a religious matter. And then we have Claudio Parinello, that is the chief executive officer of PlanetWatch, that uses blockchain in order to allow the participation of citizens in the monitoring of air quality, so a sustainable type of initiative. I would probably start with a general question here for all the panelists, right? Trying to have their own opinion about how does the intrinsic nature of blockchain benefit humanity at large, right? Having the possibility to include IoT, AI, all the innovation elements. How does blockchain relate to all these innovations, aside from payments? And of course, this has some, in my opinion, something to do with the logics of data capture and transformation. But this, the question I have for you is, how is this a game changer? How is this an innovation? And let's start with Svein.
Now we live in the information age, 20th century, 21st century. Claudio comes out of CERN, where some of the biggest innovations were launched in the early 90s, which is the World Wide Web. It's the way of exchanging information, not just text, but visually, interactively. What blockchain does is, on top of this revolution that now has even sort of penetrated our phones and our everyday lives, on top of this innovation, you have a layer where you can reliably record and exchange data in a shared state, where everybody can access it and everybody can exchange. So this starts with Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever they were, inventing these tokens for peer-to-peer exchange of value using Bitcoin. It starts, and then it goes on with Vitalik Buterin and the Ethereum founders that invented a way of having third parties issue their own tokens representing just about anything onto a blockchain. But it all builds on foundations that were built by Silvio Micali, the inventor of Algorand, which is the first scalable proof-of-stake blockchain with zero energy signature or impact footprint. So it leads us to a place where we can start exchanging all kinds of information more reliably than before, primarily in financial services to begin with, but also in e-commerce. Our contribution, Monarium, is to put a reliable, recognized, authorized representation of money on blockchains. So we're the first company in Europe authorized to issue money on blockchain, starting with Ethereum, now Algorand as well. So we're using our service. You can send money from your Euro bank account to a blockchain and back with integration with the payment services in Europe. That's about 15 seconds on Algorand. So it becomes invisible to the user, just like the user now doesn't really know what the nuts and bolts, or needs to know what the nuts and bolts of the internet are all about. It becomes the user can experience either blockchain or traditional payment services, whichever way they like. And plugging to Bloomy payment services, companies like Barbera can use.
Okay, so perfect segue. Elio, what do you feel is the benefit of blockchain to humanity?
Well, looking at these days and all the beautiful interviews in the Luxembourg Blockchain Association, I mean, you really realize the strong impact on blockchain in every sector of our society. So by accessing transparent and clean information in the decentralized way, really at the hand empower the consumer and the people to actually access information and data without a middle party that filter this information. So I would say that the access of information in the transparent way is the strongest and most powerful, competitive advantage you can get with blockchain. And then when you see that it can be applied in any sector, from finance to real estate to, of course, digital money to supply chain, like in our case, you really understand how this thing will actually positively affect our lives in the future.
Awesome. So we'll come back to that supply chain comment in a second. Claudio, what about you? How about you on the humanity side?
Yeah, thank you very much. For me, blockchain is first and foremost about decentralization and democratization, and the two. So it's not making a parallel with other IT technology. I would like to make a parallel with solar panels, believe it or not. By the time you are able to master essential resources such as energy on your own without passing through a central authority, and you are totally in charge for it, like you can get with renewables with a small home installation, this is something that removes power from a central authority. You no longer need the great regulator, the great taxation, and blah, blah, blah. You can do it on your own, and you're fully responsible for what you're doing. And that's one thing that the blockchain does for you. It gives you equal access to essential resources and assets, where one key asset is information. Other assets, of course, are financial assets and more. But to me, it's first of all about giving everybody equal access to resources, the possibility to transact, and also the very fact, of course, that nobody has the power to conceal information or take away assets and data from the blockchain. So it's about transparency. Transparency triggers increased trust, and transparency plus trust plus decentralization means democracy, if I want to make it very philosophical. To focus a bit more regarding in relation to what we are doing as PlanetWatch, it's also about giving everybody access to data and giving everybody the possibility to contribute data. So it provides a very perfect, transparent framework, for example, for citizen science projects. And we are, in a way, in some sense, an evolution of a citizen science project.
Did you say a citizen science project?
I did.
Yeah, right. And by the way, this little device right here is the PlanetWatch atmospheric sensor that allows you to take the readings of your environment around you, post it to the blockchain, and get rewards for that. So what I heard relative to the impact of blockchain on humanity is scalability, the right energy metrics, transferring information and access, transparency, security, and trust. The one thing I heard from Algorand, and by the way, Algorand is the common element here. That's why we wanted Pietro to do the introduction. Algorand is the common element here. And the reason why we're, sort of organizing around Algorand is because of their ability to solve the trilemma of decentralization, scalability, and trust. I think that's right. I think I got that right. So just Google Algorand and the Trilemma. They've got a lot of content on that. It's a game-changing technology that was invented by one of the smartest guys on the planet, has a really good team around him, and very deep pockets. So to me, in my mind, that also is, those are three very key data points relative to Algorand as well. So Claudio, you just kind of mentioned the second topic that I wanted to say or drill down on is, what is the value proposition that Elio and Svein and Claudio, you already kind of answered it. What is it that you're hoping to accomplish for your business relative to blockchain and digital currency? Elio, why don't you start?
So let's say when we started to look at blockchain and how our company can adapt blockchain in improving our business, first of all, we looked at the digital payment solution with cryptocurrencies. So we started looking at B2C and B2B solutions. Of course, B2C are very easy to implement with e-commerce, where today we accept over 14 different crypto payments. But looking, for example, at the B2B and being a company that exports in several countries worldwide, we actually realized that in some countries it's extremely difficult to send money. Distributors, our partner, are facing a lot of issues. So, for example, let's take an example of a country in South America where maybe our local partner, where we send the coffee to, has some issues with the local currency because fluctuate a lot with the price and makes ourselves, makes the product very difficult to actually expand in the country, because of course, if you have a different pricing all the time, at the end of the day, the product might be expensive in the country. So by, for example, using stablecoin in the future, allowing digital payment between, for example, Italy and another country, paying for goods, this will give a lot of, possibility for our network. Plus, will allow, through blockchain payment, you can have a faster and I would say less bureaucratic way of payment that will make also easier the transfer of money. And of course, another important aspect that we plan to implement, and we're working on it, is the supply chain aspect. So we are working on bringing the supply chain of our company. Basically, we import coffee from different plantations in the world, and we would like to put all the information of the supply chain, from the certificate of origins to information about the crop of green coffee, to certificate, for example, of the transportation to Italy, available in the blockchain. This at the end would empower the end consumer with information that otherwise it would have difficulties to get, transparent information. So at the end of the day, we believe that supply chain and blockchain will at one point merge and allow a better transparency in this aspect that protects tags like the Made in Italy and so on.
Great. So sort of like the mantra of better, faster, cheaper. Would you say that's true, Elio?
Absolutely. Like we have example of actually distributors that to approve a wire transfer, they take really weeks. It's not just expensive, but just the amount of bureaucracy the local bank asks and amount of documents really makes difficult to even transfer money from a country to another. So definitely stablecoin, for example, or with Algo, that will be much easier and faster and cheaper. Yes.
Okay, great. Let's move over to Svein. Svein, tell us a little bit more about what you're trying to accomplish.
Create efficiencies, essentially, and new use cases on the internet, which all need to be powered by money, because money is what powers our daily lives, and we can't really use cryptocurrencies in our daily lives for better or for worse, because money, the legal tender that we have is the money that dominates our lives and is here to stay for some time at least. So our mission is to put reliable, authorized forms of official money on blockchain so that people can use the power of blockchains to reduce friction in international payments, just like Elio described. But what is even more powerful than just peer-to-peer payments is the ability of the blockchain to exchange one form of asset, digitized asset, for another at the same time, programmatically in an open interface. So that you can, as Elio also described, you can start exchanging in supply chains, as we have already done publicized how you can take an invoice, for example, and settle it on a blockchain and factor it, for example, get money against an invoice that's been issued on a blockchain, which is much easier and less expensive than you could ever do in the current system.
Okay, so can you drill down a little bit more on the factoring piece?
Well, for example, if you one thing about factoring is the reliability of invoices and accessibility of invoices. So if you put invoices on blockchains, and we've done this with a supply chains e-commerce company, if you put invoices on a common standard on a blockchain in a non-fungible standard, as it were, then you can start issuing them against purchase orders. You can start settling them against delivery, and once they've been issued and authenticated by the issuer can also use them to get liquidity. Well, one of the main things that has afflicted Europe, and not just Europe, but many economies over the past year, has been a credit crunch because of the pandemic, because of a massive contraction in the economy. And the liquidity finds it very, very difficult to go from the centralized banks through the oligopolic institutions that are supposed to mediate liquidity, which is the commercial banks, and into the SMEs, which really drive so many mainstream economies, right? So by using a blockchain, you can have a common state on invoices, which allows people to attract liquidity from different sources. It opens up the market and opens up liquidity for many entities that are underserved, like SMEs.
Okay, I want to come back to that. Claudio, can you talk about what you're hoping to accomplish with PlanetWatch? I'm particularly interested, and I think the audience would be particularly interested in what you're doing relative to tokenization and incentivization.
Yes, as I anticipated, we are trying to build a framework to elevate citizen science projects into a source of big data, of high quality business grade and academic grade data by providing attractive and transparent incentives to data contributors. So that's the heart of the matter. Let me say, to be just a bit more specific, we're building a framework where citizens help make their cities smart and get rewards for this. Now, in all days, what the blockchain plays a key role, obviously, in terms of tokenizing the data, because the blockchain is a great register. So each data stream which is contributed to the register gets tracked and it's rewarded token. So it's like saying tokenizing the data. It's becoming it's an asset which is tracked via tokens. And incentives, of course, are issued via blockchain in the form of Planet utility tokens. So that's the way the blockchain adds value, in particular on the value side. And the thing this is that it is essential for this system to work that payments, the payment side of it has the same degree of transparency than all the rest of the project. And of course, it has to be, the crypto payment processes must be seamlessly integrated with all other processes, must be easy to access for ordinary people, because we are not building a project for crypto geeks. We're building a project for citizens. So the role of the payment system that we integrated into our e-commerce website via Bloomy, in particular, enabling the possibility to pay in euros via Monarium, this is essential in order to facilitate widespread adoption and scalability. So if you launch a blockchain-based project with a societal implication, you have to get it right on all the angles. And the exchange of value, of course, is it's a key enabler of the whole dynamics.
So, Claudio, are those tokens, those reward tokens, those utility tokens that you mentioned, are they fungible or non-fungible? Can they be used outside the PlanetWatch system, or are they just inside the system?
Okay, they are, planets are fungible. They are issued by our company. They will be soon listed on an external platform. People will be able to exchange them with other tokens. Of course, being a utility token, its raison d'etre is to be used on our platform and be redeemed in return for our own products and services. But the tokens will be it's issued as an Algorand standard asset, so it circulates on the Algorand blockchain in a secure way. It can be traded against other assets.
So the interesting thing about that is that if I'm a heavy user of the PlanetWatch Atmo 2 device, and I'm building up a lot of tokens because I'm in that ecosystem and I'm using it, and I want to give one of those tokens to my sister that lives in Oregon, I can do that, right? I can go through the system and buy a Atmo tube for her using my rewards and send it to her. Is that right?
Yes, this will be fully up right after our listing, but that's a matter of weeks. For the time as of today, you will be paying for the sensor in euros or in Algos or in other cryptocurrencies, but not yet in planets. But planets will be able as a means of payment in a matter of a few weeks down the line.
Okay, so back to Elio. Question: what have you discovered so far about digital currencies? And be transparent. I know that you launched what, a month ago or so. What have you found so far?
Well, in terms of proper e-commerce sales, we've seen a good start, to be honest with you, and definitely there has been this year, let's say, excitement around blockchain and crypto. There has been a good community looking forward to purchasing crypto. But what was most, let's say, interesting last trip in the UAE was actually seeing a very developed market over there. So I had a discussion, for example, with our distributor in the Middle East that actually will probably the first one to as a B2B distributor to actually make a transfer and a transaction with a stable coin between Italy and the UAE for a proper purchase of goods. So as much as we are talking around and trying to adapt these technologies in crypto payments, we are seeing that there is much more flexibility by partners, by clients to accept it. So of course, it's still the beginning, and definitely, I mean, all this adoption with cryptocurrency will be adopted more in the years to come, but we're seeing a good traction, and we will continue to adopt even more cryptocurrencies. For sure, Monarium will be our next one as a Euro digital asset. So we are extremely positive, and we are seeing a good growth with it.
So one quick question on that, and before I bounce it over to Svein about what you've seen so far. So Elio, I know that when you launched your cryptocurrency funding potential through your B2C site, through your e-commerce platform Magento, you did a promotion around it. Can you just talk a little bit about the promotion and what the results were that came from that in the first week or two?
Absolutely. So we, due to the good partnership with Algorand, we basically made this promotion that every Algo holder that would purchase their coffee with Algo will access a 20% discount. And actually, in the first week of launch, where of course we sponsored this event, we actually received a very good amount of sales from the Algo community, showing that there is a strong request from people holding crypto to actually purchase with their tokens some goods, or at least finding adoption with the with consumer products. So yeah. So
you ran a promotion on Algos, and they were used, and it was a significant discount.
Yes.
That happened at the point of sale, right? It was calculated into their price.
So basically with the integration with BlumiPay, you basically go to our e-commerce site, you purchase a coffee product, and the checkout, you can choose your selected currencies. In the case of Algo, you click on Algo through GlumiPay, and automatically will be discounted 20%. You will see your Algo amount to be paid, and instantaneously, by scanning a QR code, you will pay basically, with your wallet, with your external wallet, and it's something very fast. It's actually happening immediately. And actually, with Algo, is even faster than, for example, purchasing with Bitcoin or Ethereum at the moment, because Algo, blockchain is faster, and I think we're gonna cover this aspect later.
Yes, exactly. So it works very similar to what the user experience might be for PayPal, Apple Pay, etc. It's right now. You scan the QR code, you send the payment, you confirm it, done, over,
and it's cheaper. And also another interesting aspect is it's cheaper. So at the moment, if you're a consumer purchasing with a credit card, you will generally, as a company, will generally pay 2 to 3% of commission or fees. With Algo is much less. Of course, we're talking about cents.
Exactly. Okay, Svein, what have you seen so far? How long have you been working? Give us some history and what's going on right now at Monarium.
Okay, so it took us some. Well, there's a story behind the story, as there always is. But we decided just after Ethereum was launched that we needed money on chain in a reliable way. It turns out that Europe is the only major jurisdiction with a proven form of digital money in circulation. It's called e-money. So we applied for that license. We got that license in 2019, the first, and to date, the only company with that license across Europe for blockchains, mind you, because each application has its own different type of authorization. But now what we've been doing, based on trials with all kinds of partners, is we realized that what would be really good for the scalability of blockchains would be to build a bridge between the payment systems and the blockchain. So now what we're testing with the partners now is the SEPA SEPA is the European payment system, the SEPA to blockchain connection. So now we have demonstrated live transfers from bank accounts to blockchain wallets in 15 seconds on Algorand, slightly longer on Ethereum, and much more expensive on Ethereum, mind you. And we're not really addressing consumers. The first is more developers on the back end. We're building services for companies like Barbera, building services for PlanetWatch, building services and platforms like Gloomy, integrating with them. So we encourage everybody to come to our sandbox or download some ASA or Algorand standard assets, Euro standard assets on my Algo wallet for the Algorand blockchain and start experimenting. So we're bringing this live, a seamless integration between the blockchain ecosystem, from your wallet, your smart contract to a bank account in Europe and back in 15 seconds.
Super. So we just heard earlier this morning the Minister of Finance for Luxembourg give a fantastic talk. If you guys missed that, I would highly recommend you going back to that. He really clarified the advantages, the essential high-level advantages of blockchain in the financial space. So he talked about CBDC. He talked about the launch of the new blockchain bond that was just announced today, all about crypto assets. He talked about private initiatives. And lastly, my note is that he said this is really going to take a community. So it's fine. Why is it important for the world, especially Europe, to understand and know about Monarium and the value that it brings? Why? Essentially, what I'm asking is, why is it important for the Monarium to be successful?
Because Europe has had this policy of open banking for decades, and money on blockchains is just open banking on steroids. So it just opens up the whole box, not just a little part of the box or drawer of the box. It's just the whole box is there open for you. You can just, as a developer, you can start programming how money moves freely against everything else. So it's a whole new layer of e-commerce and capital markets transactions coming to the internet, starting in what's known as DeFi, and it will increase the efficiencies of many of our transactions. It will remove so many layers of intermediaries, just like the internet already has done in other sectors, like media, for example. So it's really important. I think Europe could be the crucible for this because of the open banking policies, because Europe has been forward-thinking in trying to open up the banking sector, just like it opened up the telco sector 20, 30 years ago. So I think the world should look towards Europe for a model of how you can use money on blockchains. And mind you, e-money is a standard form of money, digital money, which is essentially decentralized. So it's decentralized issuance of money, independent of the banks, and blockchains are essentially payments independent of the banks. So you're creating now an alternative systemically to too big to fail, which is systemically important and socially useful in all jurisdictions.
Well, I would encourage you, Svein, to have somebody from your organization or yourself tweet on the Luxembourg Blockchain Week hashtag a little bit more information about what you just said. Give them a chance to drill down a little bit and learn a little bit more about the essential value proposition of Monarium. On the Bloomy side, one of the things that we're constantly talking to people about is the value of stable currency. You know, people don't want to use Bitcoin or some of the other more fluctuating currencies in their payment processes because, you know, if they send out an invoice today, they might not get paid tomorrow. The value of the currency will drop. That way they won't get the money that they were expecting, et cetera, et cetera. So on the B2B side and on the B2C side, they want stable currencies. And so Elio, I'll throw it over to you and then over to Claudio. What's your desired outcome? Looking ahead, Elio, 3 to 5 years, putting on the crystal ball, what do you think the world around Café Barbera, and by the way, Café Barbera is really good coffee. But man, for us Americans, it's really strong. So looking ahead, Elio, what do you see the world like in 3 to 5 years?
So for what concerns crypto payments, the beautiful thing, I mean, of course, crypto payments, I would say that always have been outside. You could always find places that you could actually pay with crypto. The issue is that there was not that much of mass adoption, or maybe the system were a little bit slow, or the fact that you were paying with Bitcoin, Ethereum, or some other tokens basically did not bring people to spend, because, as you said, the price fluctuates, and why you want to spend in Bitcoin if maybe it will go up. So definitely the stablecoin introduction that has been, really strong this year. I mean, the story has been very strong this year. I think will be a game changer. So if we really, all companies try to push stablecoins payment in retail stores. So, for example, our plan within 3 years is to even implement in our coffee shop chain. We have some physical store. We have around 60 Café Barbera outlets, mostly in the Middle East. And part of our plan is actually to really accept and push people to pay with stable coins. That would be very nice. Especially in cities like, for example, Dubai, where there is a very strong international community, where they're very touristic city. Imagine someone from China just going there and paying stable coins, someone from Australia doing the same. So this really will bring a beautiful adoption of cryptocurrency. So in this sense, in B2C and B2B, there is a lot to do with cryptocurrencies payment and, of course, with blockchain use. And then there is, at least in our sector, there is a big potential again for the supply chain and bring clarity of the supply chain, protecting the made in Italy. Europe is part, a big part of our GDP, of EU GDP, comes from manufacturing companies. And tags like made in Italy, made in France, or made in Germany, or any other countries in Europe, we really are strong in our export of goods. And if we can really make a clear and transmit a clear information data of our supply chains, I think we will have a big competitive advantage comparing to other nations, for example, Asian nations. So I believe that in 3-5 years, there will be a lot of adoption of blockchain. These are just two that I think will reflect in my sector, that is a typical food industry. But then there is a lot, from smart contracts to, as Sven said, DeFi. I mean, DeFi is giving so much power to people. So yeah, I mean, it's very exciting, definitely.
Great answer. Trust and verification is what I heard there, especially around the Made in Italy brand. More adoption, more broad market, mass adoption of digital currencies and payments, probably more fluency in the marketplace relative to understanding how to use your mobile phone for scan a QR code and make a payment and so forth. So Claudio, I'd like to hear from you 3 to 5 years from now. And then by the way, for the audience, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat or the question section. And Pietro, if anything comes up, just jump in.
Absolutely.
Claudio?
Thank you.
Yeah.
So from my point of view, the global goal 3 to 5 years down the line, I would define it as unaware widespread chain adoption. And by unaware, I mean the following. I think the day that people will be using blockchain-powered products and services without knowing anything about blockchain, that would be the victory. The day that blockchain becomes a back office tool to most of us, of course, some of us will be inside out. But in order to achieve widespread adoption, blockchain should be that people are not even aware of. And it is instrumental to make this happen. Among other processes are absolutely seamless and leverage the power of blockchain to keep transparency and security to bring it to the next level, but without people needing to know about it or to do anything complex. As for the 3 to 5 year goal of my company, I mean, the ambition is to become a global reference as a source of environmental data worldwide, and to make people participate in this endeavor. So to decentralize data, environmental data collection, data processing, and data distribution, and to the process to educate people to the importance of participating in science projects, understanding what they're doing, and looking after the environment.
Awesome. So what I heard from you, Claudio, is that, a lot of people have said, okay, Web 1.0 was e-commerce and sort of basic internet functionality. Web 2.0 was social technologies and things like crowdsourcing, rating systems, social networks, socially facilitated selling, digital marketing, all of those Web 2.0 things that we now take for granted. Web 3.0 is the combination of IoT, AI, and blockchain serving their purposes to get data, to make the data usable, and then to store and make that data transparent and usable in some fashion based on the business model. So what you're doing at PlanetWatch, it sounds like you've got the e-commerce site to buy the Atmo tube and to get your products in the marketplace. But you're also using social technology to essentially crowdsource the collection of the data, right?
Absolutely. Yes, and that's a strategy in tackling a huge challenge. I mean, I'm not going to get into the details of air quality monitoring, but to make a long story short, there is a need for a high resolution, high density data referring to some environmental parameters such as air quality. And the only way to get this big data, real-time data set is to have a very large amount of sensors, especially across cities where pollution hotspots can form more easily and go undetected and unmitigated. And the only way to deploy a huge number of sensors across the city is to leverage the participation of local residents. This creates a very fast and cost-effective way to deploy. Especially, we can deliver smart cities on demand if there is an external entity wishing to invest in the process and obtain data. So, and that's, I mean, we had a very, I think it's worth sharing that we had a very interesting proof of concept a few months ago in a city in the south of Italy named Taranto, which is not well known internationally, but it's very well known in Italy because of very strong pollution challenges. Under strict COVID-19 lockdown, so there was no way to deploy a city network with any traditional strategy like partnering with companies and asking the mayor to mobilize resources, blah, blah, blah. Everything was blocked. However, we managed to deploy an air quality sensor network and go live in a matter of weeks, partnering with families. I mean, all we needed to do was to ship small parcels to homes, to people. Everything is plug and play and streams and IoT enabled. So you just ask the lady to plug it in the socket to locate the device in a suitable position, and there you go. Then you have a live streaming sensor. We have a network, and data come live to our platform. And I cannot think of any other strategy to deploy in a fast and cost-effective way a dense city network. So that's what we are trying to do, to scale up.
Exactly. And so, Claudio, what will be, so one thing I want to ask you, what's going to be your measurement of success over the next couple of years? But before you answer that, one of the things that we're hearing a lot about, and I'm sure the audience knows about this as well, is the whole concept of oracles, similar to the flight tracking database, right? You can use the Flight Aware app, and it will tell you if your flight is on time, what gate it's at, if it's been canceled, delayed. It gives you all that information in the app. And that app is pulling information from the flight database Oracle, right? And there's an API. So the Oracle is being fed by all of the airlines, right? All of their status updates. There's APIs going back and forth. So it seems to me like PlanetWatch is building an Oracle of atmospheric data. Is that right?
Yeah, you can regard us as a decentralized air quality oracle, so that our data feeds, as you anticipated, could be used. We have lots of expression of interest to use our data feeds in, for example, apps related to well-being and sports, just because people who engage in biking, running, and just going for a walk with the kids are quite interested in information as, is it safer and healthy if I go running here or there across the city, keeping into account that pollution peaks can be very localized. So if you can advise people on where to go and whether it's safer to go out for a walk at 4 p.m. or 7 p.m., this is quite relevant to people, especially people who aim to make a healthy lifestyle. And wearable sensors. We are leveraging different types of sensors for different use cases, let's say indoor, outdoor, and wearables. Wearables are very interesting for people because they enable you to understand how your lifestyle generates risk with regard to air pollution. Because you might be a very sporty guy and live in the countryside, but you may not have realized that you go every night play poker in a smoky room. So if you have a wearable air quality sensor that follows you across your day, you will learn about what are the things that you're doing that you're putting your health at risk, and you will have a chance to improve your habits.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, if you haven't seen the old movie, The Odd Couple with Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon, I highly recommend it. There's a great scene about the poker room with the guy smoking right in his face. And I always find it interesting in Boston when I see people running the streets of downtown Boston with cars zooming right next to them. It's almost like, okay, gee, it seems kind of intuitive that would probably be not a good idea. But now you can put these sensors on them and prove it, right?
Absolutely,
Great.
yes.
So Pietro, any questions or comments from the audience?
Absolutely. There is one that is about the worst case scenarios. So in this wave of optimism, Shamir asked, what are some of the main adoption barriers or challenges that you are seeing, especially in the payment space? So in other words, what are the worst case scenarios that prevent all these great things from happening? I will let you answer, and then we will make a comment afterwards.
You start with your comment.
Okay. Then I will spoiler the spoiler. Nicolas Mons actually has been sharing an article about the possible worst case scenarios related to the taxation systems. And his spoiler is the worst case scenario is not applicable given the current situation. We should read the article. Then the panelists answers.
Okay. Who wants to jump in on that question? What's the worst case scenario relative to the payment space? Elio, why don't you chime in?
I think that definitely a possible ban of cryptocurrencies like is happening in Turkey or maybe India could be something that could limit the use of mass adoption, because people, I mean, not everybody, it's very blockchain friendly, as Claudio said at the beginning, you know. Either you really love the space or you like the space, and then you will find a way, let's say. But if there is a proper ban, definitely the mass will probably not do it. So I think that government will need to adapt, or at least work closely with blockchain technologies to make it possible.
So education on the government sector.
I totally agree. If I might jump in. I woke up early this morning to have a conversation with a regulator in Europe about blockchains, cryptocurrency, and e-money. There's always, as there is when there's a new technology, there's always some, shall we say, a concern that it might be harmful if used in the wrong way. But I think, number one, cryptocurrencies are a brilliant innovation. They create an alternative as a means of exchange and as an asset class as well. So they're a fantastic innovation. It shouldn't be banned at all. It should be regulated like other asset classes and payment services. But no, the worst thing that could happen is if governments try to stifle. If they try to stifle, it would be probably in the weakest jurisdictions, which are have the weakest authorities, that have the weakest financial systems,
like Venezuela.
There you go, like Venezuela. But I mean, I'm concerned, deeply concerned that the head of the ECB should criticize Bitcoin in the way she does, because it's not really based on the qualities of Bitcoin, but it's based on perceived uses of Bitcoin, which I don't think are necessarily the case. We live in, I'm speaking now from ground zero of the 2008 financial crisis, Reykjavik, where we were lucky enough that the banks could not be rescued. They had to fail. I was living at the time actually in the UK, where the crisis was of comparable extent. I think the worst things that could happen in these countries, the Boston, the United States, North America, which Mike represents, and the rest of us speaking from Europe, and myself being mid-Atlantic, is for authorities to clamp down and not use the benefits to reconstruct or help reconstruct the financial system in a more efficient way.
Well, I'll just say that's a great point. I would throw some criticism back at the head of the ECB and challenge her on her assumptions. And I would also encourage everyone to continuously challenge your assumptions. Never more important now than ever, do not take somebody else's word for it. Google is right at your fingertips. Now, it's a little bit biased, I will say, so you might want to use DuckDuckGo or some other search engine, but test your assumptions. There's a lot of smart people out there that are writing a lot of stuff about all of these core concepts. Please do not use sort of like cliches that you heard somebody else say and they got a laugh because of it. That's the worst thing that we could do right now. So the other thing I'll say too is to find, to your point, and Elio and Claudio, I want to hear your worst case answer too. But you know, we're in a global society now. We're in a global economy, and so nation states can't just arbitrarily make some sort of, oh, we're going to ban crypto, right? Because if you do, you're taking yourself out of the global economy that's running on crypto, right? Claudio, what's your worst case scenario?
Yeah, indeed, I agree that the crypto government trigger bans would be very, very bad. But I'm possibly more worried about possible triggers of such bans. I mean, let's face it. I mean, in the past, in recent years, there have been some projects advertising themselves as crypto, which were scams. So my worst case scenario is probably that somebody entertains the idea that people should commit their financial future on financial speculation on cryptocurrency, for example, because that's not the way it's meant to work, and whatever investment, as we all know, needs to be done with professional, deep knowledge of what's going on. So my worst case scenario is that some large scale scam, which is related in some, maybe not substantial, but at least in communication ways to the world of cryptocurrency, emerges and creates that creates damage. And then maybe some regulators could use this as a, let's say, pretext or reason to tighten up regulation or just ban altogether cryptocurrencies in some jurisdiction. So to some extent, we should all do our best to make sure that, well, we cannot police our community, of course, that's not the point, but let's just hope people inside a very responsible attitude regarding communication to the general public, don't entertain expectations which are not realistic under any point of view. So we should all be very, I would say, cautious, conservative, and communicate very as effectively as we can in order to avoid any kind of problems.
Right. And truthfully, go ahead, Elio. I see you raising your...
Yeah, also something interesting, I think, to say is that I think it would be extremely stupid for governments to limit or ban crypto technology, because at the end of the day, a cryptocurrency is basically a blockchain project, right? It's something that has a aim, has a goal, wants to improve our lives, population life in different sectors. So if you look at the fact that in history, the private sector was always the main generator of innovations. So, I mean, who is going to innovate? Is going to innovate the government? Are going to innovate? So, of course, it needs to start from the private sector. And I think small, medium enterprise will be ahead of this change. And that's the reason why I even don't think that the government will actually, at the end, create a blockchain. Probably they will use an existing blockchain because, of course, there is, I mean, the blockchain growth is extremely fast. If you think about the fact that 1 year ago, DeFi was not even possible, and today you have people that actually can loan and, you know, like collateralize their asset is something incredible, gives power to people. So I believe that at least in European Union or developed, let's say, let's call it state or unions where there is a lot of democracy, I believe they will embrace it. I think that it's the common sense for countries that want to ahead of others.
If I may, Mike, I find it absolutely interesting that the three speakers essentially mirrored the four scenarios that in the article that was highlighted by Nicolas Mons were mentioned. I'm not sure if I'm able to share my screen, if I do full machine. No, I'm not able to do it.
That's okay. Just go ahead and say it.
The four scenarios were essentially the following. If I just may get there, because the whole thing is taking life on its own. So it's first a dual reality, governance. Government lacks in taking appropriate legislative measures and is lagging behind in knowledge. Therefore, the industry, on the other hand, strong investments and development of standards, so the private sector alone, without the government. And therefore, cryptocurrency are not under responsibility of the authorities, and they go for criminal use. The society reacts with negative publicity, unlimited trust, and acceptation. The other opposite and extreme scenario is beyond the hype. The government has no sense of urgency. There is a strong lobby against DLTs. Please highlight this. The industry reacts with reluctance. There is no solution to energy use and scalability issues, and we know that we are the solution to that. Therefore, Bitcoin crash, cryptocurrency crash, no public interest, no public adoption, burst of the Bitcoin bubble. The two central scenarios are called Blocktopia and GovChain. Blocktopia is government creates an adequate framework for nurturing technological developments, strong position. The small startup fuel the DLT innovation revolution. An handful of cryptocurrency are classified as safe, microtransactions. There is a high level of trust. Intermediaries are cut out if deemed redundant. There might be a risk of digital divide. GovChain is government being the early adopters of DLT. They are proactive and in control. DLT is used for optimizing internal processes, supply chains, blockchain limited to chain or sector, DGME and EU coin controlled by a central authority, high level of trust and acceptation, but worries about restricted freedoms. I think that we are all agreeing between B and C in this panel. But I find that absolutely interesting that the various feedbacks were somehow in line with those four scenarios.
Well, that's right. Thank you for sharing that, Pietro. I would just encourage anybody that is on this call or watching this video in the future to reach out to Pietro and engage him in a dialogue, because you will get the full power of Algorand in that conversation. And as I said at the beginning, these guys are really the real deal. In fact, at the Boston Blockchain Association, we hosted a sort of a roundtable on the different blockchain protocols and what the strengths and weaknesses were on both of those. And we're going to be continuing to do that. You can find the Boston Blockchain Association on Meetup. But one of the ones we compared was Algorand, and Navid Istanula, one of the smartest guys on the Algorand team. So that makes him one of the smartest guys on the planet. His big point was an aha for me, which is post-quantum resilience. If you haven't heard that term before, start reading about it. Post-quantum resilience. So quantum computing is coming, and typically one of the earliest adopters of new technology are criminals, and those criminals will, with quantum computing in their war chest, will be able to just shred existing technology architecture. And so why blockchain? I would say run, don't walk, to re-engineering your core systems on blockchain. As Elio mentioned, yeah, there's certain great things about blockchain in terms of transparency and security and authority, et cetera. But post-quantum resilience, man, that's the key thing. Okay, so let's wrap up and just go around the horn. Guys, what is one thing that people most need to know coming out of this panel? And secondly, and short answer on this, most thing they need to know, and what is the one thing you learned in this panel? Let's start with Elio, Claudio, it's fine.
What I learned about this panel in general, it's how, again, as you said, this is a new thing, the quantum aspect. It's something very new for me. So definitely the application of blockchain to every sector, and how we can regenerate, redesign our system, our structure in every business, from the most traditional one to the most innovative one. I think it's a very powerful thing. So blockchain, I mean, what I really got from this Luxembourg week, it's how actually blockchain can impact our lives in every sector. And that, of course, we need to try to adapt as private sector, as Claudio said, even from families. I mean, we should all look forward this path.
Claudio?
Yeah, what I learned right now in this panel, what's a confirmation is that I think adoption, we are really on the right path to adoption. And because, as I say, we must make the blockchain experience seamless for the end user. But it's also very important that companies such as Café Barbera, who come from a, let's say, not non-IT oriented, highly IT oriented setting, are developing such a high level of interest, engagement, understanding, and involvement with blockchain applications. So this is very, very promising, because adoption means that both businesses and consumer will step up their level of knowledge, involvement, and will identify all the value drivers and work on it. So the message is, I think we are really on the right path to widespread adoption now.
It's fine.
There's two terrific use cases that were presented here today. There's Elio with coffee, using various parts of blockchain to improve the supply chain and bring coffee to consumers. It's a good that many of us really wouldn't really exist without. Gets us through the day. Is one of these enjoyable things that spice life. So it's fantastic to see all that process being made more efficient and for the end user. So that's from a commercial, clear commercial use case being presented here today. But the other one, which is with no disrespect to commerce, is probably even more useful for future generations, is to start the collection of environmental data in a way that is accessible, reliable, and tells us something about the health of the planet, that there is no planet B. This is the only one that we know that we have available to us. And this is what Claudio and PlanetWatch are pioneering. Now, Algorand is the core engine that drives all this exchange of all this data. And Monarium, we're providing you with the money, the regular euro on blockchain, that is the same euro as in your bank. It's not a stable coin. It doesn't fluctuate. It goes back into the bank and onto the blockchain seamlessly, not through an exchange, no latency, no fluctuation in value, no hefty exchange fees. So we're trying to make this process as seamless as possible, integrated into Bloomy, of course, for payments and supporting the e-commerce part of it. So I think we have some real use cases here, and I'm happy to be and proud to be part of it.
Cool. All right, Pietro, I'll turn it over to you to wrap up, but I just want everybody to know that I just posted in the chat links to the breakout rooms. I know the next session is coming right up, but we thought we might just give people access to these speakers individually. So the links are in there. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but give it a try and we'll see. So final comments, Pietro.
Absolutely. So, I mean, in order to wrap up, I think that we had a few good examples, top down, right, of the fact that blockchain represents a key innovation, allowing the digital representation of value with no double spending by design. This is the innovation that blockchain brings. And the limits that were intrinsic to the first protocols have been solved. The Bitcoin has the blockchain 1.0, Ethereum with the smart contracts and blockchain 2.0. Now Algorand has blockchain 3.0, non-energy consuming, again, solving the trilemma, therefore putting together scalability, security, and decentralization, which represents a platform for the frictionless representation and exchange of value. The use of blockchain as layer one infrastructure for many use cases based on payments, and therefore digital representation of money, as the case of Monarium, and Rails, blockchain-based, as in the case of Bloomy, allow multiple set of use cases that come to life in terms of representation of data, representation of goods, of consumer goods, and so on and so forth. This is possible today. That's essentially the great information that I think we have been conveying to the audience during this panel.
Great. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks, Pietro, Elio, Claudio, Swine. You guys are doing great work. Thanks to Tom and Emily for your work and setting all this up, and the whole team. Obviously, it takes a village to put off an event like this. So hashtag Luxembourg Blockchain Week. Follow it on LinkedIn and Twitter and engage in all that content. Share it with your networks. Let's use social technologies to spread the word. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great day. We'll see you over in the breakout rooms.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.